And the other issue is on female genital mutilation and cutting, the Detroit case that actually, where the federal government lost the case because the law was 20 years old and et cetera, et cetera. I'd like to know, will you be able to make a statement against FGM because that's an issue in Detroit? It would be really powerful if the two Muslim congresswomen, yourself and Rashida, would make a statement on this issue.
I fail to understand why members of this committee or the American people should find any testimony that you give today to be truthful.
If I can respond to that.
It wasn't a question.
That
was not a question. That was not.
You just caught a quick teaser of a very intense moment involving Congresswoman Ilhan Omar. When this clip first dropped, it blew up, and for good reason. It captures a heated exchange between Omar and an audience member during a public panel, and things get fiery fast. In this video, we're going to watch the entire clip and really break it down. How does she respond when she's challenged directly? How does the person asking the question frame their argument? And what does this moment tell us about Ilhan Omar's political style when she's under pressure? This is exactly the kind of moment political junkies love to analyze, so stick with me. And I definitely want to hear your thoughts. Was the question fair, or did it cross a line? Was her response justified, or did it miss the mark?
Mutilation and cutting, the Detroit case that actually, where the federal government lost the case because the law was 20 years old and et cetera, et cetera. I'd like to know, will you be able to make a statement against FGM because that's an issue in Detroit? It would be really powerful if the two Muslim congresswomen, yourself and Rashida, would make a statement on this issue.
Your second question is an appalling question because I always feel like there are bills that we vote on, bills we sponsor, many statements we put out, and then we're in a panel like this, and the question is posed, could you and Rashida do this? And it's like, how often should I make a schedule? Like, does this need to be on repeat every 5 minutes? Should I be like, so today I forgot to condemn Al-Qaeda. So here's the Al-Qaeda one. Today I forgot to condemn FGM. So here he goes. Today I forgot to condemn Hamas. So here he goes. Today I forgot, you know what I mean? It is a very frustrating question. It comes up. You can look at my record. I voted 4 bills doing exactly what you're asking me to do. I have put out statements upon statements. There's a bill in Congress. There's a resolution that I am the co-author of that I voted out of the Foreign Affairs Committee. And so I am, I think, quite disgusted, really, to be honest, that as Muslim legislators, we are constantly being asked to waste our time speaking to issues that other people are not asked to speak to, because the assumption exists is that we somehow support and are for, right? No, there is an assumption. So I want to make sure that the next time someone is in an audience and is looking at me and Rashida and Abdul and Sam, that they ask us the proper questions that they will probably ask any member of Congress or any legislator or any politician, and would not come with an accusation that we might support something that is so abhorrent, so offensive, so evil, so vile. What we look for, and what this whole conversation is about, is that not only do we not have internalized fears about what we might believe and how that gets implemented. Mr. Adams, in 1991, you pleaded guilty to 2 counts of withholding information from Congress regarding your involvement in the Iran-Contra affair, for which you were later pardoned by President George H.W. Bush. I fail to understand why members of this committee or the American people should find any testimony that you give today to be truthful.
If I can respond to that.
It wasn't a question.
On February,
that was not a question. I reserve the right to my time.
It is not right.
That was not a question.
The committee can attack
On February
a witness
8th,
who is not permitted to reply.
that was not a question. Thank you for your participation. On February 8th, 1982, you testified before the Senate Foreign Relations Committee about U.S. policy in El Salvador. In that hearing, you dismissed as communist propaganda report about the massacre of El Mozote, in which more than 800 civilians, including children as young as 2 years old, were brutally murdered by U.S. trained troops. During that massacre, some of those troops bragged about raping a 12-year-old girl before they killed them. Girls before they killed them. You later said that the U.S. policy in El Salvador was a fabulous achievement. Yes or no, do you still think so?
From the day that President Duarte was elected in a free election to this day, El Salvador has been a democracy. That's a fabulous achievement.
Yes or no, do you think that massacre was a fabulous achievement that happened under our watch?
That is a ridiculous question, and
yes or no?
No.
I will take that as a yes.
I am not going to respond to that kind of personal attack, which is not a question.
Yes or no, would you support an armed faction within Venezuela that engages in war crimes, crimes against humanity or genocide, if you believe they were serving U.S. interests, as you did in Guatemala, El Salvador, and Nicaragua?
I am not going to respond to that question. I'm sorry. I don't think this entire line of questioning is meant to be real questions, and so I will not reply.
Whether under your watch, a genocide will take place, and you will look the other way because American interests were being upheld, is a fair question, because the American people want to know that anytime we engage a country, that we think about what our actions could be and how we believe our values are being furthered. That is my question. Will you make sure that human rights are not violated and that we uphold international and human rights?
I suppose there is a question in there, and the answer is that the entire thrust of American policy in Venezuela is to support the Venezuelan people's effort to restore democracy to their country. That's our policy.
I don't think anybody disputes that. The question I had for you is that does the interest of the United States include protecting human rights and include protecting people against genocide?
Wow. Okay, let's slow this down, because there's a lot going on here. First, let's talk about the setup. You have an audience member, a woman who appears to be a constituent or at least part of the local community, asking about an incredibly serious and disturbing issue, female genital mutilation. She's calm. She's polite. She frames her question by referencing a real case in Detroit, then asks Representatives Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib to issue a strong, joint statement condemning it. On the surface, that sounds completely reasonable, right? She's asking elected officials to use their platform to condemn a clear human rights abuse. That's not a trap. If anything, it's a softball. But watch how Representative Omar responds. She doesn't say, yes, absolutely FGM is horrific, and here's my record on it. She doesn't point to legislation she's supported or explain her position. Instead, her very first move is to label the question appalling. That's a heavy, aggressive word to use toward a constituent. And from there, she immediately flips the situation. Rather than addressing the issue itself, she implies the only reason the question was asked is because she's Muslim, that she's being unfairly singled out. Then comes the sarcastic, almost rehearsed response, "Should I make a schedule? Today I forgot to condemn Al-Qaeda. Today I forgot to condemn Hamas. Today I forgot to condemn FGM." The crowd applauds. Clearly, this plays well with her base. But step back and look at what actually happened. A specific question was asked about a specific crime. Instead of answering it directly, Omar reframed the moment as an accusation of bigotry. She effectively says, "You're only asking me this because I'm Muslim and that's offensive." That's a textbook political deflection. When you don't like the question, you attack the premise and the person asking it. The original topic FGM completely disappears, and the woman asking the question becomes the villain. And that's why so many people watching this clip had the same reaction. Why was that question appalling? Why not simply say, "Yes, FGM is evil. I condemn it. Here's my record, and here's what I've done about it." Instead, the response comes off as defensive and confrontational. She's objecting to being asked to condemn something she claims she already condemns, which is a strange position to take as a public official. She ends by saying, "If you want to treat us as American politicians, then treat us as such." But asking an American politician to publicly condemn a human rights violation is treating them like an American politician. That's part of the job. So what does this video really show us? Representative Omar says she wants to be treated like any other elected official. But when she's faced with a direct question, her first instinct is aggression. First, she labels a legitimate question appalling. Second, she implies the questioner is motivated by bigotry. Third, she uses sarcasm and deflection instead of giving a clear, straightforward answer. She talks about American values and human rights, but her approach here looks far more focused on shutting down dissent than engaging in real discussion. In the end, it feels less like leadership and more like political theater. But that's my take.